Great Britain is feeling the consequences of Brexit. Workers from the EU are missing, especially in construction. And that's why during this video I haven't talked about construction yet. At the same time, the country is becoming more attractive for highly qualified people from Asia, for example. Piotr is a civil engineer. Once he came from Ukraine. He's now in charge of 3 luxury villas in London that he is to finish. But construction is not progressing. He says, "I don't get any workers. No matter where I look, I can't even find any on the internet," he complains. He usually hires workers from Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, Latvia, even Georgia and Ukraine. They are reliable, often excellent tilers, roofers or electricians. But never before has Piotr experienced such a blatant shortage of specialists. In previous years, according to a study by the Migration Observatory at Oxford University, 20% of the workforce on British construction sites came from the EU. In London, it was even 30%. Despite all the tirades against the cheap forces from the EU, the city authorities of London built the streets with the help of columns of Polish construction workers. But things have changed since Brexit and the end of the free movement of people. Thousands of EU specialists have returned to Poland, Romania, Bulgaria or Latvia because of the new visa regulations and the corona pandemic and are not coming back. The visa regulations are deliberately designed by the British government so that cheap workers from the EU stay at home as far as possible. Many EU workers do not meet the conditions of the new EU settlement system, which grants EU citizens a residence permit in the UK. Not every EU construction worker has lived and paid taxes in England continuously for the past 5 years, but that would be necessary. Now the application period ends in 2 weeks. Strictly speaking, anyone who does not have a residence permit then has to go home. Work visas for construction workers and their families are difficult to come by. The proof of salary is £25,000. In the first quarter of 2021 alone, 3,294 EU citizens were denied entry to Great Britain for lack of a correct visa at the border, 6 times as many as in earlier times. The new British immigration law with a point system favors highly qualified applicants and officially declared shortage occupations. But this does not include the construction industry. And what's the consequence? According to the Office for National Statistics, the number of EU nationals in Great Britain fell by almost 200,000 people from 2019, when the EU free movement of workers was still in effect in the UK, to 2020, when free movement of workers ended. The number of people from the 8 younger EU member states, such as Poland, Estonia, Latvia and the Czech Republic alone, fell by 125,000. It is precisely this group of people who make up a large proportion of the foreign construction workers in Great Britain, foreign truck drivers and seasonal workers in agriculture. The construction industry groans that it has lost 46% of its EU skilled workers with the emigration. Brexit has forced many EU families to reflect on their situation in the UK. It doesn't always look rosy. Piotr drives through the thickest traffic for 1 to 2 hours to his construction site. He doesn't have the stress in his home country, and he and his wife don't have to pay expensive kindergarten places. Grandma could just take care of that. The UK government has also cut social benefits. The family receives fewer vouchers for kindergarten places. Due to the high number of asylum seekers, his household was also thrown off a waiting list for a new apartment. Piotr criticizes the fact that the doctors no longer cared properly during the pandemic, that there are only telephone appointments. He says, "The gap between rich and poor is widening. There is no longer a middle class here, and we belong to the poor," he says. Xenophobia has also increased sharply since Brexit. As soon as they hear my language, they scold behind my back and call me foreigners. Many of his buddies have already gone back to the EU. The online job exchange indeed confirms the trend. The job offers are increasing, but the demand from interested parties from the EU is falling. The job offers in the construction industry, for example, are 50% higher than the seasonally adjusted offers in February 2020, before the outbreak of the pandemic. It is the consequence of the boom in the housing industry thanks to the low mortgage rates and reduced stamp duty, as well as large infrastructure projects in the country, such as the London Transfer Railway Crossrail. At the same time, 13% of construction workers are still on short-time work. That means not fully active. And what's the result? Wages in the construction sector are rising faster than in any other industry. At first, this was only felt in the north of the country, where weekly wages have increased by up to 17% in the past 12 months. Now wages are also picking up in London. Indeed reports that EU citizens search their website has dropped 36% and low-paying jobs have dropped 41%. Even in engineering, the demand has decreased, although engineers have to meet simplified visa requirements according to the list of shortage occupations. But interesting is, according to Indeed, the job search from outside the EU has not collapsed. On the contrary, the search for interested parties from India, Hong Kong, Nigeria, and Pakistan has increased significantly. However, the visa requirements for skilled workers from countries outside the EU have also been simplified with the new immigration law. That explains the new influx. In addition, Prime Minister Boris Johnson offered British citizenship to 3 million Hong Kong Chinese in July 2020. Since then, their demand, especially for highly qualified jobs, for example in the computer and software industry, has skyrocketed. Jack Kennedy, Indeed economist, writes, "The changes in the labour market are a perfect reflection of the government's changed immigration policies. After Brexit, Great Britain was less interesting for EU citizens, but became more attractive for skilled workers from other parts of the world. In some industries, such as software and finance, companies will be able to compensate for the shortage of EU staff with people from outside the EU. But it is more difficult for professionals in construction, factories, agriculture, and healthcare. The construction company of the London Crossrail already fears that the construction workers and engineers will run away when the construction of the new high-speed line HS2 in the north of England begins in 2024. Thousands of employees are wanted. In addition, Johnson wants to initiate infrastructure projects with its Build Back Better program so that the standard of living in the north of England can catch up. As soon as the industry complains that it lacks EU employees, the government counters. The companies should not just hire cheap labor from abroad, but rather train domestic citizens who are looking for work. But that doesn't work that fast. The offspring have to be trained first. The construction industry offers apprenticeships, which are often even compulsory in the award of contracts. The government gives financial aid to adults who want to retrain. But the demand from interested parties is low. Pavel Adrian, economist at Indeed, says the imbalance is particularly large in the construction industry. The reputation of the industry and the number of people who want to be trained for the hard work is too low. That has been the case for years. And I doubt it will change. The corona pandemic has also weakened many companies financially, despite help from the Treasury. Employers cut training capacities in all sectors. Even before the pandemic, 1 in 5 companies said that corporation tax, the minimum wage, contributions to pension insurance, and the apprenticeship tax of 0.5% of wage costs were too high, and that they would therefore have to restrict investments, for example, in the training of employees. Civil engineer Piotr knows he's well paid in London. His wife also has a job. He therefore wants to stay for the time being and finish building the luxury villas. In the long term, however, he knows that he will also return to the continent. And it's really a fairy tale that all those jobs that are not occupied now will be taken over by British people. There are tons of jobs they don't want to do. Even the unemployed don't want to do. We are the same here. So, guys, come back to reality. I'll see you in my next video. Auf Wiedersehen.